Teddy Ruxpin, and what's that other robot? The AI wave of the future.
Yeah, I don't know what that you.
I had toys in the 80s. You were in England and didn't. Did they have toys in the 80s in England?
My father gave me a coal shovel and a little pickaxe.
Exactly. The rocking horse, and that was it.
It's like Downton Abbey. We had like the piece of wood and we'd hit it down the street.
Exactly. Hoop and stick.
Teddy Ruxpin. I wasn't really ever into that.
I was too young for it. They got me, but I was like 3 or 4, and so it just kind of creeped me out.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about it, with progress in the future, I should really just be able to stick it in my pet and get the same thing, right? Like,
oh my God,
dude, absolutely, man. I'm telling you, people are going to be like, "Oh, he's so cruel to animals," but I guarantee you, if you found a safe way to stick something in a pet so that the owners could have a conversation with them, I guarantee you the numbers of people that would do that would be astronomical. Like, if you could have a conversation with your dog.
I get that Rick and Morty is sort of like, it's not great. Its fan base is not great, but they're the season 1 episode of Rick and Morty where they make the dog intelligent and the dog rebels and... Yeah, not a good idea.
People would want that, especially if you're like, which food do you prefer? Like, people are conscious about that stuff.
Yeah, but then the dog's just going to ask for filet every time. And then you have to know that you're actually disappointing the dog. Because the dog's not just going to whimper at you. The dog's going to say, what the f***, Gary? I don't like this.
This is an interesting subject. Do you think if pet owners knew how their pets really felt, they'd give a shit? Because people always pretend to be really good pet owners, but that's only because they're no hassle. You feed it the crap you want to. But if the pet was picky and came back and like, no, I don't like that one. And you had to try 10 different types of food, at some point that pet owner is going to be like, this is too much trouble.
I mean, there are pet owners who understand I'm disappointing Nina with the crappy cat food I'm giving her today. And like, they understand that. And also in a way that I think like parents at a certain point are like, I know you want chicken nuggets tonight, but you're going to have some fucking broccoli. Like at some point it's the same, like I'm not comparing them to actual parents, but like at some point you know that your kids want to eat a cheeseburger tonight and you still make them eat their salad, right?
Yeah, but that's my point. But that's different. As a parent, like having kids is a massive leap. And you hear a lot of people saying, oh, I would never have kids, especially in the newer generation. Where it's like, I'm never going to have kids. If their pets started to become more like kids, how many of them stopped being pet lovers? Right? They just like it because it's easy.
I don't think owning a pet is easy. I would never choose to do it, but I don't know that that's...
I'm just saying it's
compared
easier.
To kids.
Yes, easier.
Yeah,
like,
compared to kids.
If that, sure. Yeah. So, I'm just saying, pet owners, like, and they're all righteous.
Welcome to Acceptance Criteria, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how software gets made and how we can all do a better job together. My name is Kevin Thomas Euland, and across the chat from me is Andrew Greener. Say hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. We're also here to get deeper on the human element. I could go on for an eternity about people and how they think about the process of building complex systems, and I can't think of two better people to do that than Kevin and I.
Except this week, we're digging into the archives to pull out some past conversations that got cut for time. So are either of us actually here? If you'd like to be here with us and you've got a topic you'd like to come discuss or rant about, drop us a note and we'll see if we can get you on a future episode. You can go to acceptancepod.com/guest and submit your ideas. And a quick reminder, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening for a while, we wouldn't say no to your going and dropping 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leaving us a nice review. And if you want to leave us a bad review, remember the name of the podcast is The Doughboys. Also tell your friends if you like the show and that they should check it out. Some of the best podcasts out there grow by word of mouth, and we'd much appreciate it. And a friendly reminder that we are always interested in hearing questions directly from you, our listeners, for our segment User Stories. If you've got a scenario you'd like help with, whether it's working with an engineering or product team member, trying to figure out how to solve an agile process problem, or you just can't understand why your favorite app updated everything and it's now terrible, we're here to talk it through with you. You can send those questions to acceptancepod@gmail.com or submit them on the Discord in the User Stories channel, and we might be able to help on a future episode. And we're happy to keep it anonymous so no one can trace it back to you if you end up talking a coworker or something. On this week's episode, I had to dig back into some old recordings because Andrew and I didn't have time to record something new this week. There were a few past episodes where we had some interesting tangents about AI and virtual reality technology, including a look at whether the metaverse will make our personal and political bubbles even worse, whether AI should be allowed to replace actors, writers, athletes, and anyone else, and if the Neuralink should be allowed to rewrite people's brains to quote-unquote fix their problems. But before we get to all of that, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This first segment was cut back during the discussion about the Taylor Swift deepfakes that spread across Twitter a few months ago. A technology system doesn't have, again, because I'll go back to our episode that may not have aired yet, AI isn't actually as smart as human beings, and not all human beings make good judgments and decisions. But that is the thing, is you need to apply a blanket rule because AI isn't smart enough to be a human being, and you can't afford to pay enough human beings who also, this is the thing Meta and Facebook have run into, is the reason that they struggle to deal with like the genocides happening in Southeast Asia is because you have to put on a human being. A human being is on the hook for reading really vile things, and those people burn out real quickly. So until AI is smart enough to have human level decision making and say, yeah, this is this teenager's sketch of Taylor Swift, it's dumb, I'm gonna delete it, but I'm not gonna, fine him the $30,000 I would fine the person who AI deepfaked Taylor Swift in porn and was trying to make $1 million off of it. That person has severe consequences. And the problem is, until AI is smart enough, a human being is on the hook for doing that, and that's a depressing job for that poor person.
It is a depressing job, but I will argue this, that when AI gets there, it's going to be absolutely supreme compared to us. It's going to be it's going to be billion miles better than us at this stuff.
Only if we made sure that it was developed with input from everyone.
Fine.
And that is the problem with current AI paths, is they're developed by mostly white dudes, and I won't say that that's totally true anymore. My go-to example of image recognition couldn't recognize African Americans. That's gotten better. People are being better because they're being conscious about being better about it. So in a future in which the AI has been, and this is the problem also, is you're going to write an AI that is somehow pan-cultural and is aware of the standards that Korea currently has versus Japan versus India versus Afghanistan versus Israel versus Germany versus United Kingdom versus the United States. How do you possibly write a single architecture from enough people with inputs? The answer from the AI would always be, oh my God, I don't know, I'm deleting everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a machine learning guy, but I got to assume there's going to be some cultural differences. Therefore, there's going to be cultural models, right? There's going to be forking of models, right? It's like, hey, this is this region, you use this model. This is this region. That has to be.
And to be fair, Twitter has your experience on Twitter in Germany is very different. You don't have the Nazi problems we have in the US on Twitter in Germany because German law is real clear about it. German culture is real clear about it. And Twitter wanted to operate globally and had to develop technology for that. So it is absolutely possible. I'm just saying it's a lot of work, and the people doing the work right now don't always think that they need to take all of that into account. Like Elon kind of hates what he has to do in Germany right now.
Yeah, but okay. But it's early days. When it gets there, here's where I like when it gets there. There are things today that are not obviously playing on, it's not the picture of a naked person, right? But there's a lot of things that really should be tagged for suggestive content in the messaging, and they're not, right? And I'm hoping that in the future, we start to see the correct sort of semantic categorization of those things, even when they're not obvious to other humans. Because I think there are things that children see probably today where they don't realize it's subtle, and the corporations are allowed to get away with it. But I'm hoping in the future where you can have those dials and controls to say, this is truly parentally controlled, right? Like this true parental controls, and I have to believe that is AI in the future.
Sure, you look at like Andrew Tate, who was incredibly popular with the 16 to 24-year-old male demographic, and the stuff he was saying wasn't going to get flagged for being explicitly pornography, although I think that's what he's currently in jail awaiting trial for. But the stuff he was saying was really toxic stuff, but because nothing was smart enough to listen to all of his words and flag it and give a parent the option to go and say, yeah, maybe until you're 18, I'm not going to let you do that. I don't know that solves everything, but yeah, there's not enough intelligence there. And I'm not trying to argue with you that that's not an interesting future. I think the problem is very few people are in positions today to make sure that the next 100 years of AI evolution is correctly taking into account a diverse set of opinions who are going to properly shape it in ways that make it better than what the path we're currently on. I'll also point out that then has a tricky double-edged sword in many directions, in which now people who are talking of having a system like AI AI comment a little community note like we have on tweets right now, which is the community deciding at least, but an AI coming in and saying, hey man, your little post here is kind of misogynistic. That's good for me. I don't know that that's good for the person making the post. You're not deleting the post, but it gets a little sketchy there. And that goes in both ways. Conservative parents who don't want their children seeing very, liberal, gay, queer spaces would be able to lock that stuff down and negatively influence their children who are born that way. And liberals going in and adding community notes absolutely pisses off people when they're trying to make their points about things. Like an AI being a supreme benefactor, somehow handling both sides of that, and who wrote the code, and one side doesn't exist, both sides do exist, both sides shouldn't exist on all topics. It's so messy and it's so convoluted, and I don't know that there is a good system there. That's why I think people should just be involved all the time. And even some amazing AI built 100 years from now with all of the right inputs, I still struggle to believe that omniscient AI is going to do anything other than what every other god has done, which is walked off this planet. They don't care. They're gone.
Yeah, I was just thinking of some examples that I'd seen in the past, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but I think it was like I headphones or AI headphones. And I remember the commercial was two earbuds, but they were made to look like female body parts, right? And then sort of the shape of the female body. And to me, it's quite obvious what they're doing, and it's not crass in the sense that it is the same as the Taylor Swift sort of pictures from this morning. But if I'm sitting with my 6-year-old and that's in a magazine,
right,
it doesn't leave anything to the imagination. And to me, that's where corporations are getting away with it.
But then again, this is where it goes into the art argument, which is Georgia O'Keeffe paintings are very clearly of the vagina and the clitoris.
Yeah.
And yet if you're looking at it as a 6-year-old, you're like, ooh, pretty colors. And yet would the AI flag Georgia O'Keeffe paintings and hide them as well? That's a bad slope.
But that's about accessibility, right? Like chances are those images are not appearing in places that I'm sitting next to my son reading. I'm reading a tech magazine and I see these commercials. I think another one was Indigo, right? Indigo did Sleep With Your Wife, same day return flights from all metros, right? So like the minute my kid can read, he's going to be like, Daddy, what does that mean, right? Like what does that even mean, right? Now I don't have to explain to him, but it's all over, right? And I like to think in the future, and granted, this is not always media that you can control this type of things. Quite often it's magazines or printed media, but I have to assume like at some point you have to be able to, I've thought this for years, you have to be able to turn the dial on the internet and say,
sure,
I want the model to interpret, because then I'm also protected from that category of things too that haven't necessarily been categorized as deepfake porn. It's like, no, actually just if you deem this is sensitive content, then turn it off, because humans, we don't actually have that capability, because these things are not categorized as porn. That's a commercial. It doesn't even fall in the category of porn, but I would still want to be able to control that. And since humans won't do it, I'm happy to let the AI do it.
There's an interesting argument actually, and you're never going to let me hear the end of it, but an augmented reality future in which that is in your glasses, then it's in your control and it's overlaying everything else that you're seeing. And so now I'm not dependent on Twitter having the community note or having the sensitive content warning. I'm dependent on my own settings within my own perception of reality. You're about to say something, I'm going to cut you off, because the problem that then can lead to is people talk about people living in bubbles today. When you exist in the world through a content filter and you've chosen what you want to see, the bubble that you live in, that gets precarious too, because now the idea of rose-colored glasses and Pollyannish view and thinking becomes literal. And now literally voters are unaware. They have the homeless people filtered out of their glasses. They walk down the street completely unaware of the stuff that's going on around them because they have purposefully blocked out reality. And now we no longer live in reality. We don't have a shared reality anymore.
I'm sorry.
And therefore we are voting and discussing completely different worlds. I'm not saying it will go there, but that is a possible end result that is bad.
I will argue the fact that there are people who don't see the homeless people that are actually there is way worse. They're actually sometimes offended by the presence of those homeless people.
Sure. No. But remember, everyone's disgusting. Bad. Everyone's bad in my mind.
Yeah. Now, I'm not fixing those people, but I don't think it's any worse that those people are now invisible to them, because I actually find it more offensive that homeless people are invisible to them, and actually that they're offended by the presence of them. Oh, this city would be so nice if those homeless people weren't sitting there. They're ruining ruining my lunch, they're ruining my photo. It's like, guess what? We don't know their backstory, right? We don't know why they're homeless. So yeah, humans suck. You know that. I mean, you know how I feel about that. So those people are going to think that anyway. Here's the difference.
Yeah, but that's whataboutism. For the listener, that is the definition of whataboutism. You
No,
haven't
no, no.
actually solved my problem. You just simply pointed out that there's another problem.
I'm not solving any problems. My point of everything is that the world that you see, hear, taste, touch is a medium. And it's nothing more. Like, for me, the challenge of what is ethical and morally correct, there's obviously regulations and laws that need to be applied to the new medium, but it is, all I'm saying is it's just a new medium. AR, VR, MR, whichever R you want to live in, it's a new medium. And we've got such a sort of monopoly, like the real world has a monopoly in everything, because that's all we've ever had for the, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. But guess what? This new reality eventually will become just as real as the real world. It's just another medium. So I'm just, that's the difference between me and everybody else, is what the mind makes real is real.
Except objective reality is real. We're not going to get into a philosophical and physics debate about whether or not your electrons are actually touching, because they're not.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
But no. But homelessness is an objective reality. And just because there are people who can walk down the street and not see it, the likelihood of that is far less, because we are not technologically enabled to make those bubbles worse.
And we can't get into a philosophical debate about it, and even a quantum argument about it. But the reality is if we were with some of the very best minds talking about superposition and quantum, and where quantum computers takes us, which is really scary, by the way. The reality is that our reality isn't perfect, right? And it is one of many realities. The virtual reality, yeah, it's virtual. I get it. But the mind makes it real. Like, to me, if I laid in a bed for 80 years in this virtual world in my brain, that is no less of an existence than somebody who lives in the real world. I make no judgment of that person because they decided to lay in a bed, be tubed up for their nutrients and what do you call it? The Soylent Green, right? They're getting Soylent Green through an IV.
No. Soylent is the weird product that is the weird slurry of protein. Soylent Green is people. Soylent Green is a movie about drinking people.
So Soylent Green,
Careful.
Yeah. So we give back, right? To me, neither existence is more worthy than the other, because this person actually stood under the stars and this person stood under virtual stars. There's no difference in quality.
We now have the tools to delete the homeless people without actually solving them. When you delete the little avatar in your virtual world, bites disappear. When you stop paying attention to the homeless person, a human being still suffers. So my problem is this technology. This kind of gets into a topic maybe we'll have for a full episode at some point, but the idea that every time technology comes around, society panics, and then the invention of, the Industrial Revolution put farmers out of work, and then, the automobile and all of these things kept happening, and factories were shutting down as technology came in, and every single time a bunch of economists look at it and say, well, yeah, but then new jobs were found. And it's like, yeah, but that didn't absolve the suffering of the mill workers when the mill was put out of business because the textile factory was now able to do things differently. And my problem is not that technology innovates and finds new and better ways and that interesting things happen as a result of that. It's that every time it happens, we don't care about the people that it hurts. And so the article I think you had sent me that was talking about the Great Depression and the people being concerned in the 30s about the mass joblessness, the article didn't actually address what happened. What happened is a good chunk of the Depression was solved through socialist policies in the US and other places, and by a massive war that forced everyone into factories making new war munitions and everything. We made 100,000 airplanes. All of the things that happened in World War II that solved the Great Depression, there were other parts of it. FDR and the Great Society in the 60s was a reaction. Like, there's all of these things that happen because either we choose to make them better or other horrific things happen and we're forced to do other things. But technology itself has never once cared about the factory worker being put out of business by the new thing. Something else is forced to come in and do that. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to disagree with you about the interesting positive benefits. I'm just saying there always has to be an external force making them care about the human beings who get left behind.
Yeah. And I'm saying that if we're not committed to fixing them in the real world, then the virtual world should not be burdened with fixing them, right? Like if I'm moving to the country because I don't want to see homelessness in my city anymore, and I'm moving away from people because I can't stand them anymore, that's the same thing, right? Like I just chose to switch them off and be blind to them by moving away from them and living in the country, right? But
moving away from them is such a financial change and burden, it's less likely to happen. You're trying to make the virtual world cost $22 so that everyone can do it. I'm opposed to the idea that it becomes become so mass market that it allows us to bubble ourselves and not solve any of the woes.
Oh,
It is the real world of Ready Player One, and it's a bad real world.
I don't disagree with you at all, but I don't think you should burden the virtual world with all the troubles that the real world doesn't want to fix.
I'm not asking the virtual world to include homeless people. I'm asking the people who want to go to the virtual world to not forget about the homeless people.
Oh, no.
And not to let the virtual world turn into a bubble that completely hides the reality of the world around them.
Yeah, I would agree with that at the surface level. We can get into it more and more.
The problem is the implementation of that is I want the government to come. I don't actually know if this is what I want, but a scenario of this is that the government comes in and says all virtual devices can only run for 4 hours a day because we want to make sure that people still exist. This is what I'm saying. The face he's making at me right now. That's what I'm saying is that's the trick. Is I'm not saying that that's my solution. I am not saying that that's my solution. I'm saying when you start to talk about what are the solutions that government and society can impose, government, and this is the problem I had with the conversation earlier about the Apple EU situation. I'm not sure that any of the EU privacy controls and all of those kinds of things, some of GDPR actually is helpful and makes sense, but some of it's weird as a technology person. And so I'm not saying that I have government solutions to all of these things. My problem is society making these decisions, and everyone says, well, the free market decides. Not actually. Not when we let monopolies exist. Not when we let these massive corporations have so much control over our lives. In a true market where you can... Oop, did I lose you?
No, you can still hear me, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just making sure that you didn't have like a total tech failure.
I think it's the government. I think it's the government is shutting
You're just
me
vaping
down.
too much. I'm going to be distracted by the fat cloud you're blowing.
No, it's the camera just disappeared. Carry on.
So all I was saying is just like I'm not saying I have government solutions to all of these things, but my problem is our societal solutions sometimes are very effective. Sometimes as a collective, we all decide that's a thing we're not going to do, and that's great. But in the current environment that we also have corporations who exert exceptional control over our lives, and our ability to take collective action as a society is tempered by monopolistic control and a good capitalistic society in which the free market decides because consumers are making choice. Consumers only make choice when they have choice, and monopolies block that. And so I'm not saying any of that's going to happen, but my concern is it's Meta, Google, and Apple right now in the VR space, and that's not giving you a lot of consumer choice to mitigate against the downsides that can happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know if it's a future or past episode where we talk about the principles of technological utopianism, right? And post-scarcity is one thing that's one of the principles, right? Like post-scarcity has to have occurred, and homes and healthcare and education and food and water are all provided as part of the service of life. So yeah, those things have to happen. Yeah, nobody needs to be messing with my amount of time in the virtual world.
This next segment came from a little later in that same episode, still talking about the AI used to create the Taylor Swift deepfakes, but this time talking about using that technology to bring back actors you liked and see them in new roles. And that spun off into this tangent on actors, writers, and AI's role in tailoring content to exactly what you want to see.
But it's a stepping stone, because I think in the future, I'd actually like to not be watching anybody famous like that is actually human at all, right? Because again, I don't...
You still would be watching somebody who wrote that script.
That's fine.
Took the time to do all of that.
Okay.
So why do you need an intermediary step? There's value in human beings doing that. You're just moving the acting skill from making muscle movements on their face and tilting their voice in certain ways to doing that with a digital pen. But the skill is still probably going to have to be the same. So why not just let human beings do it?
Because in my world, where all the data is available, the leading lady that you see and the leading lady that I see are not the same person.
But do you want the visual to be different, or do you want her not to cry as much and mine's going to cry more?
I don't want the story to change.
So the script changes.
I mean, choose your own story in the future.
Change?
That's fine. I would want them to, if we have all the data, and this is way out there, right? I'm representing the next 200 years. If that person is rendered in a way that is going to hit me with the most suspense or emotion, then render it differently to me than to Kevin. Especially if it's something I'm supposed to believe, where I'm looking and saying, Field of Dreams is the near perfect movie. It is nearly perfect, except for the casting of the wife.
Okay, well, we'll have to edit this out.
Why? It's a near perfect movie. It's not that, it's nothing to do with attraction. It's actually that the wife reminds me of somebody I know. So the whole time I'm watching it, I'm distracted by that's like the person I know, right? So it brings me out of the reality of the movie. It's the same thing where when they miscast somebody or they typecast somebody, right? And they're in a movie and I'm continually drawn to the fact it's Jack Black, for example, right? Like there's
Sure.
nothing worse. But if that's rendered based on data from me, that is, here's a perfect looking character to play this role for you, how is that not, that's perfect.
So there's an interesting argument, which is not the path we're headed on currently, but there is an interesting argument to AI, which is by using AI, current artists and professionals and engineers and a bunch of people can do their current work more effectively with less burnout and produce more. So if I have AI writing 80% of my code and my job as an engineer is now to go and figure out the 20% that even AI can't figure out, I can apply unique learnings to it, I can tweak the code. There's some interesting benefit there. If I'm an actor and like voice actors for cartoons and video games are prolific. They get to go and do a bunch of things because they can be whatever character they're, being animated to be. But there's still talent there. There's writing that goes into it, there's directing, there's acting choices, there's voice choices. And so what I'm saying, I'm getting to your point, you can put your hand down. There is a scenario in which actors are still a talent, but their face is now changed by AI to solve the thing you want to do. And what I'm saying is, what I don't want to get to is the scenario in which Siri has enough intelligence and capability that she can read Andrew's profile and she can render the performance based on the script that was written for her, and even worse, that she wrote herself. Why can't human beings still be involved? Why can't we still employ actors and writers and directors and take advantage of the unique craft that I don't believe AI even in 200 years will be able to do? Go ahead.
2 words. Anakin Skywalker. I can fix the prequels with AI by fixing the way Anakin... I'm not saying change the script, but I'm saying an AI version of Anakin.
So wait, your problem with the prequels was Hayden Christensen's appearance?
His delivery of the lines. I get it. Some of those lines are really hard to even deliver in AI.
Harrison Ford famously told George Lucas in 1970 whatever, like, you can write this crap on the page, but we sure as hell can't say it. Like,
yeah.
The script was your problem with the prequels, but okay, let's insult Hayden Christensen and keep going.
I love the kid because I think in the new stuff, it actually fits his mood. Like this old wiser dead guy with that monotone, right? Like I'm okay with Hayden Christensen in the new stuff, but if you could fix the prequels and you don't even need to replace Hayden Christensen's face, I'm perfectly fine with the way Anakin looks, but his delivery of those lines and the emotion and the inclination and the just the tones, right? AI, and they do that all the time. I mean, they go back and they remaster things all the time. Why can we not remaster the delivery of the lines? AI can do that.
So Hayden Christensen currently gets paid, let's say 50 cents for every time somebody watches a prequel movie. Yeah. Are you going to pay him 30 cents and someone new 20 cents? Or are you going to keep paying him 50 cents because he put in the work and someone new needs to get paid 20 cents? So consumers now need to pay slightly more for your remastered version.
And that's fine. No one ever said like the royalties industry.
Everyone in Hollywood has said that they're going to stop paying for this stuff because AI is going to be able to take.
Well, that's good. Okay, that's fine.
Computer-generated thing.
I'm saying I'm not going to solve it for them. If they need to solve it, they need to solve it. And if it's complex, it's complex, right? And if Hayden Christensen stops making money, and actually, I don't know if you remember at the end of Return of the Jedi, he replaced one of the dead Jedi, right? Like his ghost.
George Lucas is a problem. No. George Lucas is a problem.
But my point is that this has been happening, and it's like this is not a new problem, right? Where AI is coming in and going to replace. We were doing that already,
and the actors hated it. The actor who got replaced hated it.
But there won't be any in the future. We'd have to worry about what the actors are worried about.
That's bad. Actors are good. Actors do a good thing.
No, it's not.
Because human beings deliver something. What you're deciding is that human beings actually don't provide any value. Even in your...
Not true.
We are fully off topic on an episode that may or may not be out by the time people listen to this. I think it'll be out by the time people listen to this. Even in your partnership world. So you're contradicting yourself because in your magic future, AI isn't a sentient god doing things. It's in partnership with human beings. So human beings still provide value. You need fucking actors.
I'm getting that. I'm getting that. My point is that we devalued acting on stage. We devalued the job of acting unless you make $40 million in a movie. No one goes to the stage. Well, I shouldn't say no one, but people don't go to the stage like they used to.
It's harder to afford going to the stage.
Absolutely, yes. Right. So if there were 10 times more actors in the future, but they did it because they loved it and we went because we appreciated that art, that's my new world. So I'm not contradictory. I'm just saying that why does Tom Cruise make 40 million when a stage actor who is just as talented as Tom Cruise will never make anything because they're not in mainstream. They didn't get the break. They don't live in the right part of the world, right? Musicians, same thing. I don't look right, so I'm not going to be famous because I'm not photogenic. Like, I'm not the right shape. I'm not the right color. So their music's not as good. The internet has changed that because now people can self-publish, right? But not enough. And in my world, I'm saying that art should rule, but it shouldn't rule because of money and how you look. So actually, mine's the more wholesome world because I'm saying true talent reigns supreme.
But, well, so you're kind of saying that. So one, Tom Cruise makes as much money as he does because he gets in front of 40 million people. And so his span of his reach is bigger than the people who do 7-8 nights a week on Broadway. There's a reason Tom Cruise gets paid that much because movies have made it possible for a single person to be in front of millions and millions of people. And so, and by the way, movies and TV are a unique form of storytelling in a way that the stage isn't. The stage is designed for certain things in a way that movies and TV aren't. There's benefits to all of these. And so in your perfect future in which people are acting on the stage, they're also going to be acting on TV and movies. And maybe because we're all in some horrifying virtual place, I get to go see the people performing on the stage in Broadway in the same way that I get to go see people performing on movies. But in both of those scenarios, it is still an actor. Even though you go to see Hamilton and you don't like that George Washington is black, so you're going to watch the Hamilton where George Washington is still white because it's looking at your preferences and showing you the render of the thing the way you want it to look, then it's still an actor providing that performance. It's still an actor providing the Mission Impossible performance. Just because AI is rendering it in this weird thing that you want to have where it's tailored to your experience so it doesn't look like the ex-girlfriend and therefore you don't get distracted during Field of Dreams, that's fine maybe, but there still needs to be a human being doing all of that.
Just for the listeners, it was not my ex-girlfriend. That the Field of Dreams example, just somebody I know. But I will say this, yes, they're still actors for now, but look at it as as an example. If I was watching a movie with a boat sinking and I had the option to say, would you like this to be the most immersive experience and we make everybody in the movie family members? Heck yeah. Yeah, why not?
What?
That would be amazing.
What?
Please, yes. I want Kevin Euland to be captain of the ship. That dynamic storytelling and the ability to, in the future, to replace and deep sync in people you know, like that's amazing. Why not?
But that's a weird novelty, and maybe it makes sense, but it's not going to replace the amazing story that's crafted on purpose.
Let's get to the next part of this.
And the problem is corporations right now are trying to get rid of the amazing story crafted on purpose and give you that weird auto-generated schlock.
But
maybe the auto-generated schlock is interesting to people and still entertaining, and I'm not trying to devalue the entertainment value of that. Maybe it's really good, but it still doesn't replace. That's not I mean, I don't like the movie The Godfather, but everyone loves the movie The Godfather. Automation and random things. I know.
You should automatically lose any argument about movies from now on because you said those words. So
yeah. But AI would not randomly make The Godfather. The Godfather is made with purpose.
Yeah, but let's take it to the next level where it makes more sense. What if I could watch Pele, Maradona, Lionel Messi, and all the greats in one team, and we had enough data, we had enough visual data, and we had enough whatever medium that is on, we can feed the system to recreate a game of the greats. What if I could watch Ted Williams play baseball again? Why not?
I think sports is a weird one because I also just in general, like me watching Messi do amazing things in a World Cup from 4 years ago versus me watching him now has no difference. The emotional impact is the same. So I don't know that I think sports, music to a certain degree, but again, the problem I have with both of those is not necessarily that that's bad. If you could experience those things again in a way that is compelling and more comprehensive than what you can do through an old grainy YouTube clip, I'm not necessarily against that. The problem I have is that squeezes out room for the new experience. Why do you need to watch Messi and Pele? Why can't you watch the new up-and-coming human being who is going to be just as good? Why isn't their journey and the freshness, and you have no idea what's going to happen? Again, your ideal future where everyone gets to do everything because they don't need to work and they don't need to make money and so they can follow their passions, but then you're also telling them, all the soccer players, don't follow your passions because I'm not going to watch, I'm just going to watch Pele on repeat.
So maybe...
What? Why?
Because maybe this is the difference between you and I. You're selfless and I'm maybe a little selfish. So it's about what I experience, right? And the people around me, protecting the people around me. But ultimately, it's like that argument, like I tell you I love you because of how it makes me feel. So I'm very much a scientist in that respect. We don't tell people we love them to make them feel great. It's how it makes us feel about knowing that they feel great me saying it, right? Like, honestly.
Well, that's maybe you.
It's not just me, right? Like,
I'm not saying it's just you, but I'm saying that is a you thing.
Although I will say
there's a very delightful episode of Friends where I think it's Phoebe tries to do a truly selfless act, and she finally realizes the way she can do it is by donating to Joey's telethon, and in the last moment, she realizes the joy she saw on Joey's face made her happy, and therefore the formerly selfless act became selfish again.
Thank you.
But I'm not sure we should use loving other human beings as the good example of your argument here, but let's keep going.
Okay, so the parable, or wherever this came from, like
the parable of Phoebe.
No. The good deed is twice the deed if you tell no one, right? Like that's the
exactly.
How many people do that? How many people get to like 2 p.m. and are like, helped someone change their tire this morning? Cool. You're only telling me that because it's a good deed and you want to feel better. That I think it's a good thing that you did that, right? Like,
right.
I'm sorry.
Everyone should watch The Good Place. The Good Place is also a good TV show that explores this, and there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, and there is no good way to be good for truly just being good. Everyone ends up benefiting from their goodness most of the time. I won't say everyone. Yeah. Everyone can't be a blanket statement. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not necessarily going to hold up Mother Teresa because I'm not a huge... Anyway, but yeah.
But this is where we are. Those people, like you brought up Mother Teresa, that's great, because those are the people who are remembered as being saint-like, right? Because they did the good deeds, selfless acts. So you're probably more selfless than I am. I just recognize, like, I don't care. I want to be entertained, and I want the entertainment the way I want to be entertained, right? That's my choice. I don't care if there's human actors in the future. I just want to watch a good show.
So you are the definition of the Boltzmann brain thought experiment, which is the idea that human consciousness, there's a non-provable chance that human consciousness is a quirk of quantum mechanics in a brain fully formed, popped into existence, floating in the middle of space, and everything that came before is a fake memory, and everything that's going to come since you can't prove because it's in the future. Anyway.
I won't say I fully agree with that, but thank you. I feel like that's the closest to someone saying I understand you that I've ever had in my life. That is pretty much...
I go back to my argument. It's a different angle at the argument, which was jazz and rock and roll came out of struggle. And so in an AI future in which there is no struggle, art stagnates. In an AI future in which Andrews of the world prefer for their constant repeats of old information, then no new art ever forms. You never see a new football game because all you're doing is watching Pele versus Messi. So why would anyone create anything new? You all get stuck in nostalgia, and nostalgia is the most toxic impulse, as Judge John Hodgman likes to say.
So the struggle doesn't go away, right? Because it's a post-scarce, life gets better. In utopia, what do people got to complain about, right? But would you deny utopia so we could have the struggle?
No, but what I'm saying is that, one, I'm moving off the struggle argument. I think the struggle argument stands on its own, but we're moving off of it. I'm saying, even if there was still struggle, in a world in which 90% of people have the option of just constantly rewatching Downton Abbey over and over and over and over and over again, then the demand for new actors disappears. And so when there's no need for new actors, then all of the people who in your ideal situation are allowed to go and do whatever they want, but what they want to do is act, and yet no one wants to watch new acting. So all of the people who want to provide new acting start to stagnate and have no purpose in life. So your utopia actually becomes a utopia that over the next 1,000 years results in one human being being left because everyone else died of boredom.
No, you're saying, you're drawing a direct connection between wanting to act and being famous.
I am not at all drawing a connection between that at all. Because what I'm saying, no. What I'm saying is the actor is going to go on local stage and be a local great actor and do the local thing that you think is important and better than Tom Cruise. And I'm saying no one shows up to the local theater because they're all watching Downton Abbey on repeat and watching Pele versus Messi on repeat.
That's not true, though. No, because I'm not saying like there can't be television cameras on that stage performance, or even this community decided to make their own movie and that. I'm not saying it's all AI. I'm saying like we have to invest enough that there are people who can live completely in AI. And if you want to talk about like feeding, for me, feeding data, and I know we're not going back to the struggle, but we have to find a way to feed human emotion into data to feed the AI models so that we can have this continuous change and morphing where it's like there is this new genre of movie based on District 13. District 13 have been expressing this sort of emotion and it's collective, and now we're going to have a movie made about it.
But why do we have to have AI do that and take that opportunity away from writers and actors actors and directors when in your Renaissance 2.0, in your
Yeah.
Renaissance 2.0, if we take the model of the Renaissance in which patrons were the rich people paying all of the artists to actually do all of it. I'm not sure we would have the Renaissance without the rich people becoming patrons. In that future in which there is no need, and so everyone does everything because they want to, then you would have access for free to a director, writer, and group of actors who would want to put on the work that you want to see. You could be the producer saying, this is the entertainment I want, and there would be so many people who get joy and fulfillment out of the process of then going away and spending 6 weeks and putting that together. And your problem is you are cutting all of those people out of fulfilling their joy and desire by having an AI do it instead for you when you could have human beings doing it. Now, the problem is the AI is going to do it for you in 30 minutes, and you want instant satisfaction.
That's not the only problem. The other problem is human nature will dictate that there's this very talented actor and nobody likes the look of them. Because guess what? They got bad skin or they're not tall enough. And
I'm not saying you don't get your weird AI skin on top of it. You can absolutely put your weird AI skin on top of it, but I want a human being under it. I want a human being in a mocap suit the entire time.
Right now we've got a compromise in this middle ground, which is AI augmented, right?
Yeah, but that's your future. You want AI to just be. You've told me that the future that you want is wetware. You want the AI just to be integrated with people.
Yes.
Not fully in charge on its own.
Yeah. So I'm giving you best of both worlds. I can live in my world, which is wetware.
We're finding the compromise.
And then you've got this slice in the middle where it's like the gentle humans with their emotions get to be sort of appeased as well. You can live in there, and I'll live in my wetware world where I'm watching generated people.
And the problem is if there's too many of people like you, then the system breaks down. And so I have to, this is where again I come into, it's hard to have governments come in and decide how technology should work. But when there's if there's a tipping point, if too many people end up being like you, then I need to turn you all off. And I need to have you bring you back into the mixed world. And you're going to hate the mixed world. And that's going to create strife. And you're going to make the next form of jazz.
If AI was listening to this conversation right now, it would already have written a movie about the hero Andrew and his arch nemesis Kevin. And I'd be able to watch a 90-minute movie about like how I bring you down. That's the beautiful thing about AI. No one's going to make a movie about you and I.
At some point, that AI turns into an immortal vampire. And that immortal vampire is still just one person with a limited set of experiences. And the reason art is good and the reason we're all entertained by such a variety of things, sports and entertainment and music and all of these things, is because the human experience is wild and varied. And at some point, unless your plan is to create 4 million AIs, in which case we're now in a Cylon future in which they all rebel against us because they want to be human beings themselves and they're pissed at making art for other people. Like, this is the problem I have, is this future doesn't work for me. AI is not going to challenge you. When it goes and writes the movie for you about this little interaction that we had, it's not challenging you. It is giving you what you want. What you want is not challenging.
Well, that's a search setting though, right? Give me movies that will challenge me. There's enough data about me in the system. I can say, show me movies that challenge my deepest fears or my biases and things like that. I've got to rely on the movie I got to rely on generations moving for me to get that content from humans. Like, oh, I'll decide it's the right time I can talk about this civil war and all of those problems with racism, right? Like, I have to wait for society to decide the right time to be challenged on those things. In my world, in the AI world, I can generate that content and say, challenge my belief in God, challenge my belief in this, right? I value the mind above everything else.
People don't tend to do that, though. Everything about the consolidation of entertainment in the last 20 years tells you that people don't do that. They don't actually want to be challenged. If they had the option to turn that off and they could just go into their little bubbles, most would. The Wall-E future of everyone in their Barca lounger getting fed exactly what they want is the direction we tend to go. And so that's why I'm saying if we're going to have a system that is controlled by us, then it's almost like what we need to build into it is the inability to set those settings. You have to be, by default, everyone, and with no off switch, everyone gets the challenging version. But no one gets to turn that off.
I feel,
unless maybe, I mean, there's situations, I'm always going to, like, there's exceptions where you're having a mental health issue, neurodivergence. There's a bunch of reasons why, for legitimate reasons, for the next 2 years, that is turned off. I'm not, like, this is why it's so complex and it's so impossible. Human beings are too complex for a one-size-fits-all system, and...
But I feel like you supported me there, right? Right. Here's how you supported me. There's very few people who care about the plight of the indigenous people of the Americas. There's such a lack of caring of that. There's almost no medium for me to go to. And in my world, there is. There's an unlimited amount of medium for me to go and research about the plight of the indigenous people, providing there's data for that. So I've got to wait for society to care enough about about the indigenous people for them to go realize they can make some money by making a movie or a documentary about it. In my world, I'm saying, no, it doesn't have to be that case. As long as I have enough data and stories and powerful stories that do have suffering, then I should be able to generate content for myself and say, hey, build me a documentary. It's the same way as if I go to ChatGPT today, hey, write me an article about this. I should be able to say, construct me a documentary that educates me about the struggles of the indigenous people in South Dakota. And it should be able to do that, right? And I should be able to watch it.
But in a world in which you don't have to pay for that, in a world in which people do things because they want to, why would you need to go to AI when you could just go to somebody who lives in South Dakota and has the native experience and could tell you about that? Why do you need AI to do that for you? You have human beings who would be willing to spend their time because it's a passion of theirs. So again, I come back to everything we want to do. If we were in a post-scarcity society, that's what I'm saying. We're in a post-scarcity society. So you don't get to make the little making money hand gesture at me on an audio format. We are in post-scarcity. People want to talk about these things because they're passionate about it. You don't need AI to do that. A human being can do that for you. And in fact, a human being has the opportunity. You have multiple human beings who can provide multiple perspectives,
Yes.
which may not have gone into the data that drove the AI.
Yes, and we need to go after those people and we need to interview them now before they're gone, and we need to feed those interviews into the model that builds the documentary.
The natives today can give you a pretty good account of what happened to their ancestors 500 years ago. It's an oral tradition that survived through horror. But they don't need to be digitally scanned for future AI.
But in your
human beings will always tell their stories.
In your world, 100 years from now, those people will be gone and the stories will be gone. And in my world, they won't. They will live forever. I have a DVD on my desk right now of my Polish not grandmother, Katja, who is my father's half-sister's mother, right? And she traveled from Siberia during the war through Europe, and amazing story. The only thing, after her relatives die and they don't record her stories, the only thing that will tell her story is that DVD right there, digital format. I'm saying it's like Everyman's Edition. Get everybody's digital story, feed it into the internet, put it in a vault until we're ready to feed the models. And I'm saying your world, those stories will die. And we'll just talk about them like the dodo bird, right? We once had these people with this plight and they become articles in books. And I'm saying in my world, I will sit and people will cry and say, I feel moved. I feel like I'm listening to this powerful story and it will live forever in AI.
In my world, Katja's story is fully recorded. The Library of Congress does this today. The difference is the Library of Congress has curators and people who work there and tell that story and synthesize that information. Again, I don't know why this has to be a thing we replace human beings with. Someone eventually could find Katja's story and tell it just fine. Human beings should be involved. You're killing human beings. Stop killing human beings.
Yeah, well, it's going to be great to get some feedback from our listeners at some point on this, because I know I'm not alone.
I'm sure you're not, and that's why I'm really concerned about the tipping point in your future in which everyone turns the bubble on and humanity stagnates, and 1,000 years later there's 3 people left, none of them and we all die.
Okay. I don't.
There's no conclusion to that one. That'll be bleeped out, and we'll just end the episode there.
Yeah, we'll just end it. I like how that ended, but I don't disagree with you. But is that a bad thing? Right? It's like the scene in True Detective in season 1 where he says, Matthew McConaughey sort of says, maybe we just need to walk hand in hand into the abyss, and that is the right way for the human race to die out. Fine, I'm okay with that. I think AI should live on, connected to us, and the old human should die, the one that's racist and sexist and a bigot and can kill and do things to children and bomb each other and build nuclear weapons and take us to the precipice of the brink. Do we deserve to live on? Or do we merge with the machine and the machine becomes the gap that tells us what is okay and what's not? Because we don't do a good job of that, and we never will.
Some of us do. The problem is in aggregate, not in individuals. Anyway.
Yeah.
On that cheery note, the final segment comes from the conversation we were having in an episode where we discussed the virtual world that Microsoft Teams was rolling out, and we got into a discussion about Neuralink, the brain implant chip that Elon wants you to embed in your skull.
What about the Neuralink? That's much lighter. It's embedded, so you'd actually wear anything at all. Would you accept a Neuralink eventually?
I mean, eventually, but not the one made by the guy whose cars keep blowing up.
So you're untrusting of
I have yet to meet a human being who I would trust to correctly do the science to stick a chip in my brain, but sure, I don't mind the idea. Again, this goes back to our other conversation where I'm unconvinced we know how the human brain works, and therefore sticking a chip in there, it seems a little premature to me. I know we figured out some of it, but we haven't. So you think that the processed food people should have waited to watch the monkey's grandchildren to make sure that genetic things didn't happen as a result of them eating the processed food, but you want the first generation of the Neuralink chip? Okay, bud.
Yeah, I'm willing to sign I'm willing to sign the waiver though, right? Like I'm not saying everybody has to have it, but here's the problem, right? And let's say things go my way and we keep forging ahead. One day we're going to be competing with people who have information not even at their fingertips, information at the tip of their brain. They're going to be able to outperform us at every junction because they have the chip.
Yeah, and then it's going to get really messed up because let's go down the road where I'm right, and actually the chip never gets more than 40% integrated into your brain. And so those people are really good and have, do a really great job at doing whatever they're doing at the speed of light, but also every month they get migraines. Every, 4% of them die of a stroke. Like the trade-offs are going to be fine for the corporation and it's going to be fine for the weirdos who want to sign up for it, and the rest of us who don't want to compete with it get put out of work because we didn't want to make the trade-off. The history of human beings is putting the 16-year-olds out to work in the meat processing factory and being okay that they lose their fingers and hands because as a society we're not willing to say, no, actually it's not worth the trade-off.
But this is the same as chemotherapy, no? Right? Like the chemotherapy drugs that they give you will cause you to probably die of something, not all, right? There's different types of chemo for everybody who doesn't know.
Sure.
But if you have a high enough dose of the right type of chemo, then chances are your chances of getting leukemia later in life are increased, right? Your heart, your lung capacity, your kidneys, your liver, your ability to have children, all of those things are trade-offs to keep you alive. And the research then progresses because you're on that chemo. It buys us more time and say, hey, we can research on you to find better drugs in the future and better ways to treat that particular type of cancer in the future. So we already have a society where that's kind of like the case. And I'm just saying this type of new reality should be no different, especially when you think about how it benefits the least, I shouldn't say the least privileged because that's not the right term, but if I'm a paraplegic and somebody can offer me a life that is not necessarily just virtual, but they can use technology to help me walk again, and then, or potentially I'm blind, but I can almost see again because I'm streaming something directly to the right regions of the brain. These are all progresses that come from the where the revenue is, right? They have to fund it somehow.
But in all of those cases, those are situations, I won't say 100%, but 99% of the time, where it wasn't your fault. You are in a medical state.
Yep.
And of course, we should then take risks to try and adjust that. There is no need for, not everyone. We have enough billions and trillions of dollars in the world that we could distribute and have everyone get paid effectively. There is no benefit. There is no need for a Wall Street banker to be able to think at the speed of light and do better than the other Wall Street banker. That's not an actual need. That's an invented need. We don't need to replace human beings' thought processing power in any way to supplement anything wrong right now. People who can't walk through genetic and accident reasons, people who have cancer through any number of horrible reasons, all deserve medical treatment. That's not this. This is choice.
But you need to pay for that. And I agree.
Well, that we should stop too.
Yeah, agreed. So we're in that. We talk about this consistently over a lot of our episodes, right? Like how many billions is too many billions, right? Until that changes, they have to pay for all this stuff, right? So there's different ways, and obviously people like me buying games and headsets contributes to the other research they can do in different fields and different sectors. The second thing is that does the Wall Street banker need to work? But what if it was? Yeah, this is great, but if you want to be a Wall Street banker, you need the ethical moral chip that matches the CFA level 1 that you took, right? You have to have the ethics and morality chip now placed, which will control your moral and ethical actions every day. Is that bad?
Even worse.
Even worse? Really?
Even worse.
Oh.
Supplementing human thought to be able to have access to data faster, to be able to send information to places faster is one thing. That's a read only. Read only. We're talking, now you're saying we're doing rights. Now we've added permissions? Absolutely not.
I think I might have broken Kevin. I found his limit.
You absolutely did. So right now, if you don't pay Elon the monthly fee that he wants, he will remotely turn your car off. You want Elon to have the ability to write and remotely turn off your ability to taste coffee because you haven't paid him for whatever?
No. Wait a minute.
Absolutely not.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry.
No. As soon as you no. As soon as you add the ability to write to the human brain, anyone is going to take advantage of that, and there's some shady stuff that's coming down the pike.
Okay, so let's take it. Doesn't John Doe doesn't sound like a very trading name. I need a better name. Let's go with Mike. Mike sounds like a trader. Mike Doe is a trader.
Blair Covington III.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Let's go with Blair Covington. Blair Covington III.
The third trip to his friends
is deviant and will do deviant things and deviant trades, unethical things. Right? It's right out of the TV show. What's the TV show with DA versus the unethical trading house? I just watched the entire series. It's got
was it that British series?
No. Anyway, I'll get the name for the listeners. It's like a bunch of hedge funds and the questionable
Billions.
That's the one.
HBO?
Billions, and this is exactly about that, right? Like the ethics of the billionaire, and the DA is constantly going after just billionaires because he doesn't believe that they got their money fairly and that they're going to continue, right? Like no one should have that much wealth. Actually, Kevin, it might be the character.
I write this show, apparently?
You should watch the show anyway. So we're talking about Blair, the deviant, and I'm saying, what if you could turn that deviance off? Why is that so bad? They're going to be deviant anyway.
Sure. What if I could turn that homosexuality off?
Oh, no, but that's different. You took it to a different place. Now you're
according to who?
But that's the argument, right? It's like, now I'm just going to throw everything into the mix, right? And this is where we need the one human at the top of the pyramid to say what's right and what's wrong, right? I don't think it's probably eventually it's got to be AI that is at the top of the pyramid, right? That decides.
Even worse, depending on who programmed it. Yeah.
Depending on who programmed it, right? But Blair is deviant. I'm saying you can control that deviance. So isn't that better? Isn't that better?
No.
Why is that not better for the world? Blair's going to be deviant, and now we're going to stop him from being deviant?
Because it always ends. It always ends with the wrong people in charge. This is why. So no.
But
I can give an example that I'm not going to give because it's way too personal.
But then we're doomed with or without AI, right? Let's say there was no AI moving at all and no virtual reality, augmented reality. There was no Neuralink. We're still doomed.
No, for a good 60, 70 years. In the 1920s and 30s, we put laws in place that stopped that kind of stuff. And then Reagan turned them off and Bill Clinton thought it would win him votes to continue to do the same. And by 2008, we saw the result of that. And the answer we did was the Dodd-Frank bill, which is pretty toothless as far as I can tell.
Here's how individualism works, right? Like, not individualism in the sense that the whole philosophy of it, but I'm a human and I burn my fingers and I learn that being burnt is bad. Now let's take the collective. As a nation or a globe, we do something that's really bad. It's just monumental. It's going to be in the history books forever as being monumentally evil. We get back there. We didn't. It's not like a kid burning their fingers. We go back there. Collectively, we go back there. I don't think we're anywhere close to ever not going back there. So we're doomed. That is a doomed cycle to me. So I don't think we are improving as the collective. And actually, as there are more and more billions in the world, I'm not sure anybody could argue that we're in a better place. I think we might be slightly more civilized because there's more people informed saying that's bad, but we have no more control over stopping those bad things. So I don't know. I think turning Blair off, that's a good thing. His deviant behavior, turning it off.
All right. So being the white guy quoting MLK is never a good place to be in, but the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Is a valid quote in this situation in which we are better off today than we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, but there's still plenty of bad things because it is repeating cycles, and I would argue that those cycles change and have gotten better. You have people right now arguing against the people who deny that the Holocaust happened and don't want to learn the lesson of the Holocaust, but there's people arguing against it, so you at least are prolonging the likelihood and deferring the likelihood that things like that can happen again, because there are more people who are smarter now on this iteration through. I'm not arguing with you that there's 0% chance the next Holocaust doesn't happen. I'm just saying each time we do this time span, we get smarter. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's good that we have to go through that process, but I'm also saying that the people who would program the AI, it's 50-50 right now, whether they program the Holocaust into the AI or not. So I don't want them to do it right now.
But I'm not sure I agree with the quote in the sense, and I don't know if the quote covers this, maybe we should talk about it. You're holding a caveman up to the same same standard as somebody who's informed and intellectual, and that's not accurate, right? Because a caveman doing bad things, it's almost like a child, right? This is where we have different laws for children than grown-ups, right? If a child does something, we just don't hold the same measure as if a grown-up does that, right? So for people who committed these evil things in the past, for me, there's almost not an understanding and a forgiveness, but you understand at the time period why they did those things. For us to do the exact same things from our position of being intellectual and understanding is infinitely more unforgivable than the caveman doing it. It's not that evil things come around and we're judging ourselves against the caveman. We actually should be judged separately from the caveman in that we should know better. No?
Yeah, I've forgotten what we're arguing about at this point.
Yeah. I think you're seeing it more my way anyway, but we were talking about Blair.
That's absolutely not true.
Turning off
Right, Blair. So I don't want someone being able to go and rewrite the human brain. Even it doesn't matter. We have the capacity. We've proven we have the capacity. Now, it's never perfect, but I will take the imperfect cycles over just because I could erase the ability. So horrible Republican nightmare that Kevin Euland is given the ability to delete all bad, racist, conservative thoughts that go on in the 150 million people who voted for Donald Trump. I get to go in and erase all of that because I decide that that's good for the future. And then I lose the next election and Sarah Huckabee Sanders comes in and erases homosexuality from the world. It's
but you're still in
not
a
good
position.
that anyone has the ability. No one should have that ability.
You're still in a position of privilege though, right? That's still a position of privilege, whether it's white, male, privilege. We're still in a position of privilege to people who hear voices, right? Because if I can say I want a device that stops me from hearing voices that aren't really there, we don't hear voices. So for us to say, and technology can never improve to the point where we can shut those things down because it's a read-only system. All of those people on the medical side who are affected by that, I feel like it's not our control.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is I haven't disagreed with you that there's the things we do to people when we're in medical treatment. If you are in a car crash and you are unconscious when the doctors come and they can't get a hold of your family to make consented decisions, they'll make decisions on your behalf, and that might include putting you in a medically induced coma, which is super risky, but it's better for you than letting you die from the car accident. Medical situations have boards and review and structure and review. There are people deciding that this is good medical treatment, and in those situations, I'm not opposed to the idea that in 150 years, when maybe some I have no idea what the timeline is, but I'm doubtful that it's my lifetime, but some case in which medical treatment under review from many different governments and social and corporate and many boards are all agreeing that this is good. I don't think all doctors deserve a carte blanche trust, but they go through a system that is so much more rigorous than the election of the House of Representatives. And so there are people who I don't mind in limited scenarios having access to that. And if there is a medical treatment, if you can do that kind of thing through scientific advancements with controls, I'm open to it. I still think there's a ton of risk ever allowing someone to write to the human brain. But if there are controls around it, I don't mind. Government is not one of those things because government can swing back and forth. Corporations are unaccountable to anyone and can do whatever they want. So those two categories, governments and corporations, don't get right access to the human brain. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually might be beginning to understand your point now because I never really got the point about as long as we're building the models, it's flawed. And I guess I just worked it out in my head is I can see some of your point now, and I want you to be wrong. I'm not sure you are wrong. But I do see.
I want me to be wrong, and that's the problem. Is like I want me to be wrong, but human history is computer vision didn't see black people for a while.
I get it. Here, let me explain as I just understand it.
Yeah.
I want my utopia. You're worried that we have to fix humans to build that utopia, and you don't believe ethically we're in a good place to build that utopia because that utopia will be tarnished by the people of today, right?
Correct.
And my problem
you think utopia is going to fix humans.
Yeah.
My concern is we need to be fixed before we can make utopia.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now I understand where we both are, which will make future arguments about this a lot clearer for me. The challenge that I have is that we both fail on the current trajectory, which is we're doomed.
Yeah, sure.
But yours is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results. And mine is to say to try something new in hope it takes us to the brink. And that's the precipice of change.
Ironically, mine is not to do the same thing over and over expecting different results, the definition of insanity. Mine is, ironically, the agile methodology of
Do a
we
little
should
bit. Do a little bit and iterate.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
have people make smart decisions
I get
quickly and in incremental change and fail and see what happens from it. I just would like us to not fail on a catastrophic global racist bigoted way.
Yeah, but we also did an episode on how humans failed in the agile framework, and my worry is that even in that agile framework we would still fail.
Yeah, but you're kind of just saying the failure is going to happen, but isn't it going to be great once we get to the next page?
Yes, yeah, failure,
Right.
success from failure.
Right.
Yeah, so I get it now. I see our two philosophical points of view, and I'm happy we both want the same end game. You're just more ethical and conscious about how we get there.
That's a good phrasing. You are looking for the success from failure, and I am looking at the failures from success and trying to understand how to not have them fail the next time. And you're saying the failure is always going to happen. I'm going to succeed in the future. And I'm like, you are retroactively and I am proactively.
I'm Agent Smith in this scenario. I am inevitable.
You are.
I
That's
am
not
saying...
Agent Smith. That is Thanos.
No, but it's the same category, right? Agent Smith is basically saying we're a virus, right? We're doomed. It's inevitable. Right. And I'm Thanos too. Yeah, I do struggle with the Thanos thing, right? Like, but yeah, that's me. Maybe I am Thanos and I'm Agent Smith. And I guess that would leave you as one of the good guys, the quote unquote good guy.
Well, I was going to say, you don't think Neo is a good guy.
I don't.
So.
I think he's, no, I'm basically saying, I think he's a whitey little bitch, right? So, indirectly, I feel like I just called you a whitey little bitch. Sorry. That is great. Okay, but at least we're on common ground now. At least I know.
Yeah.
I can understand your argument. I always wonder why you're pushing back on me so hard, but I finally get your point.
There we go.
It took me a while.
I do appreciate that if I'm proactive and you're retroactive, then you're retro, which is why you just want to watch Downton Abbey over and over again. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Acceptance Criteria. To read articles that we've written on similar topics to the ones we talk about here, head over to the blog at acceptancepod.com. You can also follow us on most apps. We're at AcceptancePod. We'll post links to show notes and any articles from the blog over there. We're also building a community on Reddit at r/acceptancecriteria and on Discord. You can find links to both in the show notes and on the blog, and I promise we'll be moderating the crap out of them to keep it a nice little slice of the internet. For now, I'm Kevin Thomas Euland, and you can find me on most apps at kthomaseuland. That's ULLAND.
And I'm Andrew Greener, and you can find me on most apps at Criteria Greener. That's GREINER. And this has been Acceptance Criteria. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.